Good morning. Welcome to this session, paper session number 2 conference. Welcome also to conference. Welcome to Luxembourg if it's your first time here. This session will present 5 different project subjects, and we'll try to organize it in a way that there is at least 5 minutes questions after each presentation. So presenters, please be very sharp. You have maximum 15 minutes. When you sit and speak, you can use the mic here, or if you want to stand, you use the other mic. And I am from LIST. My name is Marija. I will be the first presenter, so I also have to keep time for myself. I will be presenting a project that has started this year in LIST. That's an Interreg European project, a collaboration between cities and communes or municipalities in the Northwest Europe. And you will see the consortium and all of that. So the project has only started as a couple of first workshops and works, so I'm reporting on that. I don't expect major conclusions yet. The project tackles public authorities and regional or cities and their issue with standard digitalization and pressure that have from regulatory bodies regarding sustainable development, responsible use of energy, and the materials. This pressure, of course, as you know, these innovative technologies like big data, AI, and in our case here, the digital twin technologies, are seen as a promising, powerful tool to help authorities make better decisions about maintenance of the infrastructure or urban planning or the water management, flood management, etc. Our project here will focus on the use of digital twin technology for, in general, territorial planning area, which will cover both the management of water, the management of transportation, for example, in the city, the management of urban planning, and the use of energy. Are you familiar with the digital twin technology? Yeah. So it's a big hype, it's a promising technology, but there is still, to this day, a bit of confusion, especially in the non-tech people, what it is and how it can help innovation and how it can help decision-making. This project is a result of the network that we are in, the consortium we are in for a long time. And we've gathered prior to the project the observations that public authorities and experts in the domains in which this technology is supposed to be helpful, they don't have a proper understanding. They don't have also enough competence and skills in general in the public administration to be able to effectively use this technology. And you certainly know that this technology is being pushed by the tech, by the market, simply. And what we observed as a gap is the lack of skill and competencies. So the technology is there, and it's also affordable for the moment. There is a growing use of these sensors for monitoring, for gathering data, but the skills of the public authorities and decision makers is still a big gap. Another layer here is because of use of data everywhere for making the decisions, and because of the possibility to collect all the possible data elsewhere, there is the growing issue in the, especially big cities in the consortium, about, of course, GDPR, so the regulation of the use of data, and inclusion of citizens if their data are being used for making this. So this is one other layer that this project wants to tackle at the same time as raising the skills. And then we've also observed that throughout the consortium, there is a big range of the maturity level of experimenting with these technologies and using LDTs or similar technologies for different decisions in the public administrations. And so the idea was to network and to collectively transfer knowledge and collaborate to raise each other's levels, simply technically, but also in terms of skills and competence. So the project wants to contribute with a strategy that will facilitate the uptake of these technologies by also providing the framework for the ethical use of data, for the governance of these technologies, and recommendations regarding technical designs, because there is a bias, of course, into when the market is pushing, there is a vendor that is pushing their own solutions, and we wanted to provide the framework that is independent from any technical push. So critical examination of what is to be done. We will achieve that by experimenting through pilot actions and exchange of knowledge between communes, innovation partners in the projects. And then ultimately we aim to produce some kind of a training scheme that will be used internally with the partners, but also hopefully externally outside of the project has barely started. We had one round of interviews and workshop to basically gather a status quo. As you see, there are partners from the Netherlands, Belgium, UK, Ireland, Germany, and Luxembourg. Municipalities range from the small to million cities of 1 million. And there are small companies, startups that are in charge of technical developments, often in support with the city. So this is the partnerships. And along the projects, there are universities or institutes like LIST that are helping the whole chain of innovation and simply acting as facilitators. So it's supposed to last 4 years. To better organize, you here see the clusters we put the pilots and partners in. Depending on the sector they're working and they want to experiment technology in. And each time there is a city that is a lead, depending on their level of maturity, and the others that are followers or only exploring the possibilities. We work together, they work together. And as you see, there are cities that are appearing in one domain as leaders, but in the other domains, they're only learning. So the idea is if they are mature with the use of technology in one sector, they can simply extend that using the knowledge of the use cases in other parts. And also the advances, the problems, all of that. I wanted, as I said, we've done the workshop to simply explore the status quo in the current cities, in the current situation, and to observe the issues. And so I wanted to share some of these that I found relevant. Of course, I have to anonymize, so it's city 1 and 2. But just to oppose and for you to have the idea of how different the use of technology can be and the desire or the drive for this development or the use in decision-making can be different. So for example, here we have on the city 1 side, left-hand side for me, is a small commune that has a big budget to implement sensors in the communal buildings and to use this information to monitor the use of heating, climatization, and electricity to optimize, not to heat when there is no use of the rooms, for example, in schools during the holidays and stuff like that. And they want to go further with the technology that is already there in the house, in the buildings, and to put this layer of exploiting this data. They also have big 3D models nearly of the complete municipality, so they can couple that and really get the presentation that goes towards the digital twin with its functionalities of monitoring, prediction, simulation. We work with the expert here that are well aware how this data can be exploited. The person in charge of the Department of Sustainable Development is manually maintaining the Excel with the historical data and doing his own projections, knowing the algorithms behind some calculations. And he really feels the pain. He uses this data to negotiate with the municipal authorities the budget. And he feels the pain of not having the technology as support. And it's really, it's like a super small municipality here in Luxembourg. I know a bit of details because I'm also in charge of facilitating and helping there. But they don't have technology. They're really at a low level of digitalization. Their applications are developed with the operational mindset, so just to support this report, just to support this. When the vendor comes and installs the sensors, they simply put their own application so they see the temperatures and all of that, but there is not a strategic view on what this technology can actually provide. They are put in the group or in the cluster with the city too on this slide, where the development of twin is actually coming from the technological push, but they only have 3D model and the static data that are available through open data platforms. And now they have the twin, the tech people know what can be done, but actually the experts are not having a proper understanding of, or not even a clarity of what they can do with the technology. And so they have the challenge of first identifying their use case before even being able to start to develop the algorithms for analysis, for simulation, to gather data. And of course, impact of both sides is that not real-time data is available for decision-making, nor the technology is currently exploited for simulation prediction, and etc. On the other side, for example, another cluster, and I will probably not be able to cover the next one, you have the situation where they have clear desire to use the technology to mitigate, heat islands. So it's a big city, but they only have a broad idea of what they can do and how they can gather the data, but nothing is ready yet. They don't even have 3D models. And they need to first elaborate the architecture and get the clarity on the use case before they can proceed. Of course, the experts don't bother because they don't see the need. As there is no technology ready, there is no architecture yet available, there is no 3D model, so they can see a bit more clearly. So it's funny to see that no hindrance is purely technological here. And actually, that's not... I come from a technical side, so usually technical people or IT people don't see how big of a hindrance all the other aspects can be. It's not just because the technology is ready that you can effectively use it. And also all these cities need guidance regarding that. This city is put in the cluster with another one that has a clear use case here, urban planning with better visualization and simulations. As you see, there have multiple technologically pushed LDTs in use with also 3D and advanced visualizations, but low interest in the urban planning department. And of course, there are many possible options. They've gathered all these scenarios that have been discussed in the consortium, using it for air quality management, for flood management, for using management of the green spaces with regards of watering and use of water, but they have absolutely no clarity how to prioritize and how to proceed, although technologically the architecture is there. And so this is a status quo in the project that actually confirms our general findings that we also observed in the beginning of the project, that there is really a struggle to precisely define their use case for the use of technologies. Often also strategic vision is lacking to how this technology can be used in not just one use case, but in the many scenarios in the public administration and municipalities. User engagement, I stressed for you. And then there is also the governance models behind the technology are very different in our clusters. You can have very centralized models, but there where the case is clear, the maturity of the use of technology and data is there. They start to expand to including external partners or including providers of the data. Soon to come data spaces, right? In the use of data for the simulations and predictions. So there, the governance model slowly starts to shift. Technologically, of course, there is a growing use of IoT devices in many places, but for example, many challenges are observed with regards to lack of the strategically designed architecture to support the twin and to include the twin, and then inclusion and integration of this technology with the current landscape of applications that is existing in the cities or authorities. We've observed that needs to be simply designed strategically, not from the operational and opportunistic point of view in order for the technology to mature and the use to mature. The use of the LDT currently, so the capabilities that are currently used is mostly 3D models of cities coupled with the geographical information system, so with all this geoloc information, and mostly static data, so just presentations of data. It has been observed that using the engines for more interaction, like a gamification, helps stakeholders be immersed and see the interest. And of course, coupled with this technology is the dashboarding that comes on top to present the data in a visual, intuitive, relevant way. That is also a factor that facilitates user engagement, stakeholder engagement. And I will just finish with saying this project has started. This is the first observation that we had. We are now organizing the workshops and work in the clusters. So for those who are interested can join us. Here is the website. And that's it. This is from me. Thank you. Unless there are questions, we are going to move. Thank you. So we move to the next one. Forward.
Okay, thanks. So, hello everyone. My name is Mostafa, and I'm a researcher at the Norwegian University. Today I'm going to present a recent set of scenarios that we developed for the European Union. So, in this work we had a lot of collaborators from different institutes. I don't go through all the list, but from NTNU, Berlin, PSI, Vienna, ITRIEM in Greece, Kassel University, and France. So this work is a part of a maneuver project, a CDP project that it was granted last year. And the duration is 36 months. So we started the project last December, still less than a year. The total budget for the project is 3.8 million euro. The aim of the project is to improve and coordinate energy in Europe by facilitating ambitious emission reductions for a clean energy transition using recent EU policy suggestions such as REPowerEU and a couple of other European plans. So these are different. These four are how Open Entrance, a recent European project, pictures the future of electricity generation mixed. These two are two other scenarios that a clean planet for all 1.5 degrees life scenarios of electricity generation. Last one is from they are same thing, electricity generation. The question, which one is going to happen? Short answer, none of them. These are scenarios. So scenarios are not predictions. Predictions are actually very good in many applications, but they are worse when we need them the most. And in a complex system like energy system, predictions, they don't work. So what is the purpose of developing scenarios then, if it's not prediction? Scenarios are descriptions of journeys to possible future. They reflect different assumptions about how current trend will unfold or might unfold in the future. So the purpose is to create knowledge for the future. But these are hypothetical futures, but not arbitrary by no means. They are a structured tool of thoughts to explore how the future might look like, and we don't assign any probability of occurrence to these scenarios when we study energy transition. And there are different methodologies for developing scenarios, but in this work we use one that is based on expert knowledge. So this effort is the first work package of this project, and we need these scenarios to study many cases studies within the project for different countries and also for the whole Europe. So the aim is to develop pan-European scenarios, and we will publish the scenarios after we finalize them, and the steps include qualitative scenarios and then quantifying these scenarios. Because normally in many applications directly or generate quantified scenarios. But in energy transition, because the system is very complex, we first need to qualitatively describe the scenarios, then quantify them. And the scope, it covers the whole Europe, and the horizon is 2060. So we are going to include a couple of European plans that recently launched into account. One is REPowerEU, a plan that launched as a response to Russian invasion of Ukraine. Fit-for-55 package and national energy climate plans. These are the plans that each country individually sets for their energy transition toward 2040. So the steps, we first define the goal of the project, which, as I said, in this project we are going to study energy transition in Europe. Then we gather some information and we choose the methodology to develop the scenarios, and then we develop the qualitative scenarios, and after that we quantify these scenarios, and then we can use policies and recommendations, policy makers at the end. Yeah. So, as I said, the methodology that we use in this scenario development based on expert knowledge. This is a very, probably the most simple methodology, but very effective, this version that you see here. So we reduced all uncertainties in the system to only two uncertainties. And we consider two future developments for each of these concepts. For example, in this SUSPlan project, they reduce the uncertainties to only two factors. One is public attitude, and the other one is technological development. So for the public attitude, we have indifferent publics, and we have positive public, or positive society. And for the technological development, we have low and high. Combining all these developments, we end up with 4 scenarios. Then we describe these scenarios in text, called a narrative or a storyline for the project. This is the simplest version of developing scenarios, but it's quite effective for energy transition. And for example, SSP is probably one of the most well-known energy transition scenarios that. So in a previous project, we extended the 2D space to a 3D space, including 3 key factors. So it has the advantage of including another key factor into the scenario development. But also, we increase the state space of the scenarios, because now we can have more scenarios than 4. So now, how do we choose the scenarios? That makes the scenario development a bit more complex. So in this project, also, we use the same methodology as the first step. So we use a 3-dimensional space for developing the scenarios, and we extend the methodology a bit. So in this project, we first identified all the key factors that can influence energy transition. And we ended up with a very well-known analysis called a step analysis, which includes society, technology, economic, and political factors. Because of the current situation in the world, we added another factor, or it's a part of political in general, but we added it separately, and that's geopolitical because of the current situation in the world. So we have 5 main key factors, which are listed here, but each of them has a couple of sub-factors. Like, for example, social, we considered public awareness of climate change is one factor, but acceptance of both technologies and policies are also important. Behavioral shift, how the consumers will react to energy transition in the coming years, and also, does the society put any pressure for environmental actions or not? So in the first step, we identified all the key factors, but then, as I said, we considered a 3D space of uncertainty. So in this study, we considered geopolitical instability, public attitude, or we called it social dynamics toward transformation, and innovation as these 3 key uncertainties. For each of them, we considered 3 developments. For, the society can be indifferent. The society can be middle of the road, so they can be kind of positive or kind of indifferent to the energy transition. And then we have innovation, which includes both technological advancement, but also other kinds of innovation, including financial innovation or AI. Geopolitical instability also includes geopolitical tensions and wars, geopolitical rivalries, and trade disputes, and etc. So having this space through different workshops that we had with the core team for this scenario development effort, we placed 4 scenarios in this 3D graph. So I quickly go through them. Here, the first one, you can see NECP essentials. We considered this scenario to see what is the relationship between these NECP plans that the countries already have with the other scenarios that might happen. So this is not actually a scenario like the other ones. Until 2040, we only use the investment plan of individual countries and then compare it with the other scenarios. For EU Trinity, this is a pessimistic scenario. The society is not very positive. Innovation is not very high. Geopolitical instability is high, both outside Europe, but also inside Europe. We have some fragmented energy policies. Countries don't collaborate with. Then we have REPowerEU++. This is somehow a long version of REPowerEU. So in this case, we pictured a very united Europe while we have high geopolitical instability outside Europe. The society is partly positive and the innovation is also partly high. And the last scenario, which is an optimistic scenario, GORES, in this scenario, the innovation is very high, the society is very positive, and don't have geopolitical. We don't have geopolitical instability within Europe and outside. So we have collaboration all around the world. So, and then we developed the narrative for these scenarios. You can see, for example, here for REPowerEU++, I don't go through it, but we just give life to these scenarios in this step. So now, for example, REPowerEU, in the REPowerEU++ scenario, the European Union launches an ambitious journey toward energy security and sustainability set against a backdrop of persisting and escalating global geopolitical tensions outside. And also, we added some research questions to make these narratives a bit more engaging. So, because I don't have much time, I just don't go through the whole narrative. Yeah, but then we noticed that if we go only with factors, for example, what happens to policies? Policies are really important for energy transition. So now in the scenarios, we consider 3 primary key factors. We formed that 3D future space, but now we didn't consider policies. So, and we thought that we have to include policies. So then we discussed, and then we concluded that we have to include all the key factors in the scenarios, and we have to make assumptions to make it very clear. So in this graph, you see the first 3 rows, we already decided these are the location of the scenarios in the three-dimensional space I showed before, but we added also political targets, policies, and regulations to the scenarios, and also economic factors. For demographic changes, we considered the same population for all the scenarios, the current project, the best current project. So, and in the last step, so this is step 4, in the last step, so now we have to quantify this scenario. Previously, most of the scenarios stopped here, but we wanted to make this a bit more systematic, this quantification of the scenario. And because of that, we tried to make assumptions for everything that needs to be quantified. For example, this table has many sections. I just brought a cutout of the table. We called it qualitative to quantitative matrix. So in this table, the first section is about policies. For example, we, as the first part, we say compliant with the Green Deal by 2030. Yeah, so you can see the status of each of the scenarios for this specific item. And then this table is very comprehensive that facilitates the quantification process. The scenarios are being quantified using a software called Genesis Energy Transition Tool, and are going to be quantified using other tools in the future. Currently, 3 European projects are going to use the scenarios, which I hope that more projects are going to. Yeah, thank you. That was my presentation.
Thank you for this very pedagogic presentation. As far as I understood, you are presenting the scenarios like kind of linearly, like one step after the other, coming to a conclusion. Like you say that scenarios are for generating knowledge, and this knowledge becomes like policy recommendations at the end. I was wondering if more than a linear process is a kind of iterative process, because these recommendations, I guess that they are for someone. And if they are going to apply it or not, do you have any reference? Is these recommendations really do not end with the process but arrive and have some impact? And if this impact retrofits the scenario prediction, this scenario generation?
Yeah, actually. So we started this procedure like in December, and we had many workshops, and we definitely had many iterations. So the procedure that we took for developing the narratives was that we to make the best out of it. So we separated the team into 6 groups. Each group proposed a set of scenarios. And then we merged these scenarios. So we took the best one out of them, basically. Or sometimes we really merged them, so we the average. And then we sat there and discussed all of the scenarios one by one. And then we fit back to the scenario. This happened for all steps, basically. So we had an iterative process, and still it's open. So until the next 2 years, even during the quantification, if a part is not, if a partner comes up with, because these scenarios have been presented to 2 project partners, and if there are comments from them, we are going to revisit the scenarios again. So it's still open, but we had many iterations.
Thank you for the presentation. I really like the visualization of going from 2D to 3D solution space. That's really neat. Just a question on, obviously, you've developed the model and the method and applied that in the context of the EU. Do you have an idea of how readily you could apply a similar methodology elsewhere? Would it require a complete overhaul of the approach, or is it quite flexible to apply to different scenarios for other continents, for example?
Yeah, I believe that it's quite flexible because the way that we identify key factors. So this step analysis, which I wasn't aware of it when we started this procedure, but when we wanted to write them down, we found out that these are part of step analysis, which is a very well-known analysis, apparently, to systemize the way of thinking, right? And I believe that because these tables that we developed are very comprehensive, so it's we can use the exact same methodology for different continents or countries. But of course, we need expert knowledge of that in a specific region. That's really important in this methodology.
To be able to choose parameters, right?
Yeah, parameters and which ones are more important. What are the policies in those regions?
Last question there was. Thank you.
Hi, it was a very nice presentation, thanks. And also linking to last comment, I would say that it's quite flexible because in a previous European project we were using a very similar approach, but to local energy plants and involving different people. And well, it was a slightly different process, but at least in our case, we involved in those scenarios and choosing those uncertainties where you were making the matrix. Like, for example, public administration practitioners, because they are more accessible at local level. And in that sense, my question is, to what extent did you have the chance to involve politicians at national level? I think is a bit more difficult. Just to back up a little bit more, maybe the near projections on the policies the countries are taking.
Yeah, actually, we no politician included, but we had a lot of stakeholders. Which, some of them might have some contacts with politicians. Some of the people had some meeting with politicians, but the main goal here, we wanted to have a range. So, because now we have a pessimistic scenario and have an optimistic scenario, right? And we believe that everything else happens within that range. Right, and also the NECP, those come from basic, the national level, and politicians are very involved in those plans. So that comparison also, we think that will add a lot of information to the scene. So no direct inclusion, but I believe that still the scenarios can produce very good knowledge for the policy. That I'm not quite sure to what context they have been involved, the politicians, and I'm not quite sure. What do you mean by politician? If it's like a policymaker, then I guess these NECPs are the ones, then NECPs are the plans that are going to be implemented in many, many countries. So I think,
Thank you. So we go for the next presentation from University of Sheffield. Gillott. And this time a bit about circular economy and its use in the building sector. Sorry.
Thank you. Good morning. So as Marija said, I'm Charles Gillott. I'm a civil and structural engineer by trade, currently working as a postdoctoral research.
Thank you very much on time. Any question? I would have one question. In terms of stability, how is embodied carbon behaving compared to just concrete, for example? Stability in the building.
In what sense? Sorry.
When you have the construction, how stable that material is, how much it contributes to the stability of the building compared to the concrete.
So I'm not.
No. Okay. Okay. No, because in the circular economy, of course, you're going to, in that context, look for the reusability, recyclability, and all of that. But are the other elements or parameters considered in the same, with the same weight, with the same importance, or not?
No. So this has a prioritization. We look within this as hierarchy where we will prioritize building level reuse. In that, it will be component level reuse, and then we have recycling, downcycling. So that's where the circularity question comes into play, with the difference between the steel frame buildings and the concrete frame buildings, in that, yes, the concrete frame buildings can have a lower embodied carbon up front, but they have very little reuse potential. They have very little recycling potential at scale and in a carbon efficient way, and typically they are downcycled. So it becomes a question of, is it worth the potentially more significant upfront investment in a higher emission material in steel, or potential future flexibility? That is something else that we're looking at.
Because online people.
Oh, it's online people. Okay, yeah, all right. Yeah, so the concrete, so the upfront for steel is obviously higher, but you can reuse it pretty quick, or you can use it fairly efficiently. With the concrete, though, I've had a few discussions with people before, and a lot of them in the field, particularly people involved with recycling concrete, believe policy and science is a bit behind that concrete's actually a lot more reusable than it is in its current state and how it's being processed. Is that something you looked at or seen?
Yeah, so not in this particular piece of work, but the follow-on that has now begun. We kind of we try to split things up into standard, best, and future practice. So the standard practice in the UK, you hear 98% of concrete is true, but it goes into smaller holes below buildings and in roads. So it's still up. That was our standard. Best practice was anything that we saw that was commercially available in the UK, which there are some concrete recycling, there are some elemental concrete reuse, so putting out a panel of a floor slab and using that elsewhere. That would have gone within the best practice. But we also did try to look at that future practice where we're actually breaking down that would be captured in the future practice. So we try to acknowledge that, yes, we can get there is probably potential to get there, but currently, in a scalable way, we're still looking at 90%.
Okay. Sorry, but what kind of use do you see in the future for concrete, for example? It's like you break it down into gravels or something like that, and then you...
So that is how it's typically used. In terms of that future practice, there are a few people at the University of Cambridge project where they are bringing up material. There are people, as I said, cutting out blocks of previously in situ concrete, using those blocks as precast concrete, usually with huge wastage because of the size that you would have to cut out. But there are also people, crushing it, looking at using it as aggregate within the concrete. But there's a huge debate to be had on the emissions associated with those processes, whether they're scalable, and actually whether it is recycling or if it's still downcycling.
Thank you all.
Thank
you, Charles. Still in the UK with the next presenters, Glasgow. Neil, right?
Thanks a lot for being here today. Really interesting presentations and very much focused on technology, but also on energy. And what we will try to do now is change a little bit the subject, also involved in all the climate action paradigm, but more looking at climate adaptation. So in this sense, we will try to show the work we've been doing lately in one of the European projects we are participating, that is called Just Nature, and is mainly looking at nature-based solutions and the impact they make on thermal comfort of our communities, especially in cities. And as from IES, I'm Koldo Urrutia. My colleagues Beatriz Fraga and Niall Buckley. We come from IES, that is a digital twin provider, and in that sense, we provide some software for digital twinning, and at the same time, we provide consult partners based on the knowledge and the software we are developing. So the main topic I will touch today is how to use those digital twins to calculate outdoor thermal comfort in a virtual environment. So first of all, I will say a few words about who we are as a company. IES is the largest building physics analytics team in the world, which sounds pretty big, but we are not that many. Mostly, or like the main piece of all that virtual environment is our engine, simulation engine, which is called Apache. And well, based on that, we are able to analyze the building stock and try to recreate in the virtual environment what happens in reality. And this is just mainly how it works. So we have some 3D modeling that has some physics embedded, all the algorithms behind. So it's not a static picture of a 3D model, let's say. And then we are, in last years, we are incorporating all the data from the sites through sensors, other techniques. So we merge both, and then through different techniques like artificial intelligence or machine learning, we fill the gaps of data. We try to predict data for the future, and that's what we call the digital twin. And then we can use that both for planning stages or design, and also for operation, and try to improve the performance of the building stock. But as I said, we are trying to aid 95% of that technology to the outdoor space at the moment. This is one of the bets of the company. And well, I will try to frame it now, but it's mainly about the heat exposure citizens are suffering in the public space. So as you know, human progress is attached to greenhouse gas emissions. We all saw the three presentations today. We know that we are beating all records about particles per million and emissions. But let's say that regarding heat exposure, cities are in the spotlight because they are part of the problem, but a partial solution to this crisis. Just to give an overview, within occupying just the 2% of land worldwide, cities are aggregating or concentrating 56% of global population, 70% of GDP, 70% of waste generation, and CO2 emissions. So there is a huge impact and very concentrated. Now we are gathering in cities 4.2 billion people, but in 2050 they are expected to host 6.7. So let's say that more or less all the people that is living today in the world will be concentrated in cities in less than 30 years. And of course, coming from those CO2 emissions, we know that the climate change is having an impact. There are some unforeseen consequences that are altering the life condition of people. And just to give an example of that, if we combine the greenhouse gas effect and the urban heat island effect, that is that concentration of heat exposure, for example, in concrete surfaces or in cities, there is a study that is forecasting that mortality rates in New York will rise from 2007 to 2050, which is quite a lot of years, but it will increase in a range of from the 47 to 95%, which is a huge range, but anyway, there are huge numbers. So there is just one way out to all this, just improving the outdoor thermal comfort of our cities, and this is the best way of addressing the heat exposure. But the question is, how do we do that? And how we address that improvement in cities, and at the same time do we have the resources to just implement without planning? I think we don't. We are kind of assuming that we have to simulate before implementing, for example, in energy issues. But I don't see the municipalities or like public or private developers simulating these kind of situations, which are key for the future of our communities. So we'll have a brief look at the most known techniques that combined, according to scientists, scientific studies, are the most effective in having an impact on increasing that outdoor thermal comfort, which are shadowing, as being below a tree or maybe next to a building that is shading, and then the albedo of surfaces, that is property connected to the radiation that some surfaces have because they've been exposed to heat or radiation. So, well, this is a quite visual exercise, but I'm sure you can close your eyes and just feel the pleasure of being under a tree. You don't sweat, you are comfortable. I don't know, especially during summer. I think it's a great place to be, and it's just to feel that the sun exposure is on you and you are somehow protected. You have a nice degree of humidity. Well, I think we can all understand the difference between being on the shade and being on the sun. For example, in Madrid at 40 degrees in July, as it was the case last month. And the other part that we try to integrate in our digital twin technology is the surfaces albedo. So in this video, you can feel that asphalt or concrete that gets all the heat and then it's radiating for a long time. Like, for example, in Southern European cities, we feel that at 2 a.m. you are just hanging around, and it's like a radiator that's still emit some heat. It's a huge difference. You can even feel it with your eyes, right? But of course, you have to be there to feel it. So, as I said, our municipalities, most of them, they are implementing, but they don't have specific metrics. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense if we compare to other sciences. So, our objective there's a few softwares that do this, but our idea is try to use our physics embedded engines to also integrate it with 3D models, have a visual experience of it. And we have 5 minutes. Okay, I have to run a little bit. So we'll try to integrate that. I won't go into the details. Algorithms and scientific studies we went over just to get all the science behind, and we are trying to patent that. So I cannot show it here, but I will try to explain very quickly at least the simulation process we are following. So we are transitioning from the real world, which is the reality we have, to the virtual environment. So we bring everything to our suite of tools. We create a baseline. With our algorithms, we are able to produce physics-based simulation. And then back to reality when it's time to implement everything that we simulated. Say that we move some trees here, there, we change some surfaces, asphalt to grass, we put here a water body, and in that sense, we can feel the difference and compare the different scenarios. Sorry, this is how it looks, a model in our software. So let's say that a user has a model in our software, as the one we saw right now. We introduce the weather files that are files that have been calculated for standard years and days, just taking data from the history. Then we introduce new objects like trees and their shades, different surfaces. We set the relevant characteristics of each of those. Like, for example, if the tree, the growth rate, what kind of trees, size, etc. And also the surfaces, because depending on the surface, we will have different emissivity values and the albedo surfaces, which will affect a lot the simulation of outdoor thermal comfort. And then we just launch the simulation. So regarding those 4 key steps, this is how it looks. For example, a tree. For example, in our software before, we were not able to build a tree geometrically, and also that the shade has an impact on the calculation. So it has some opacity or some translucency to affect the calculation. Well, all these things have been taken into account. Weather files, just setting the universal thermal climate index values for each of the spots. For example, we choose city, longitude, latitude, and we have the weather files for that. And then we set the relevant characteristics of objects. You can see on the right there is a dialog that opens some attributes for each of those objects. So choose the characteristics of each of those according to our libraries. And then we run the simulation. This is how it looks more or less. This is we don't know the shape that we'll take in the future, but at least now we do it like that, which is ICD, our software that is a plugin from SketchUp. So we have a model, we set all those parameters we said, and then we run the calculation. So this is one of the videos just showcasing and testing because we are in the last stages of development. Yeah. We press. We have everything, and we run the calculation for that specific time frame we've selected. Is running. I'm not sure if I can go a bit faster with it. Oh yeah, for this size of model depends on the size. It takes like 30, 40 seconds, and then you get first like a layer with time, and then we'll just to say that we can save the results, and then we can display those results faster into an online viewer, so we can share it with our stakeholders. And let's say that we have, for example, 3, 5 different alternatives. Positioning and surfaces, and in that sense we can have both values, the values for each of those the models, and compare them scientifically, like strictly, rigorously, and then also for planners, like you said, that it's quite intuitive for not that technical people to have just color maps that are consistent among each other. And so once we've calculated within our software, then we can go to the on the cloud viewer and just press the UPI simulation. We upload there the GLB file that was created in our the other software, and then it's there, and we can create in and compare. So final remarks. We are now in the final stages of development, and in that sense, we are testing this in the different pilots we have in Just Nature project. So this is a huge opportunity for us, and we are still with the last user interface tweaks, mainly being consistent in the urban thermal comfort, outdoor thermal comfort values, and the time frame simulation, let's say from June, July, or this specific time of the day, for example. And then the next steps would be to take simulations in data. Have sensors in place, and it's really good to validate simulations, but at the same time have this real time between the data we are getting from the sensors and our simulation. And then, well, within IES as a company, we are trying to give solid steps towards this climate adaptation branch of our software. We were just on energy, but now we are going a bit more to resilience and nature-based solutions as well. And then we are, of course, looking forward to apply it and further develop our tools. If you come in these days, talk to us and community to collaborate. And that's it. If you have any questions?
Thank you. I would invite only one question because we are running behind. And the other questions, please, in the break.
Hi, just a very interesting presentation. I would like to talk to you more later
Okay, thanks.
on. In your simulation, do you start, is the results you present at which time step after the planting? Because I imagine when you set up a new NBS, trees are very small and then they grow and then you may have mortality. Does your model take this into account?
Yeah, there is a growth rate of trees. So in that sense, it depends when you make the simulation. But I didn't have the time to explain, but for example, we are using Leeuwen City as a case, and we took a street. So within that street, we have the baseline that there were no trees, and then last year they performed half of the intervention with trees, some urban farming areas. So we can simulate that, and then during the fall, we are they are implementing a co-created version. Next stage, which is the other half of the street. So in that sense, we can simulate the baseline with nothing. The first stage, which we can compare it with the sensors we have in place, and then we can use this kind of online viewers to plan the different impacts the planning alternatives would have on the second part of the street. That sense for the planners is very useful because they can share it with different stakeholders in workshops, for example, or maybe they can come get back to us and say, okay, they want some mixture, some in between those two scenarios. But yeah, regarding it's mostly because if you are forecasting maybe 10 years, as you say, some trees will change. So in that sense, size bigger. Or for example, if the leaves are falling during the fall, which is, I think, one of the best trees you can have for heat exposure. So you are getting all the warmth in your building during the winter, but then you are protected. Quite a clever tool, a tree. I would suggest to plant a tree instead of spending a lot of money in, I don't know, static solutions.
Okay, I'm sorry we are running out of time, so we need 15 minutes also for the last presentation. Thank you, Koldo. Yeah. And you also give me a good bridge to the next speaker, who is also from Spain. So please, Francisco Javier Diez from Tekniker, please. About data spaces.
It's just perhaps a very different topic for the previous ones, but I hope that it's for you. This paper has writing by Gonzalo Gil, Izaskun Fernandez, Romero, and me. Both of us works in Tekniker, Technological Center in the country, in the north of Spain. The work is about data spaces, and the motivation of the work is the digital building permits and DigiChecks and project. I will introduce shortly the data space concept, the construction data space that we have developed, the core of this construction data space is the data space connection, and finally, perhaps the more development in semantic interface and content. Building permit management is a problem because the administration has to make complex processes. The level of digitalization construction is very low. The results are delays. DigiChecks European project, and it's project that started in 2022. It will finish the year, and in the consortia there are construction companies, IT companies, centers, universities, and the objective for the project is the creation of a new digital framework to interoperable, trusted data sharing platforms of different stakeholders to facilitate the management of building permits. A very large objective. Well, what are the changes? The changes are the different regulations, user data, there are different formats, proprietary and times, and so reluctance that involved. Then this problem, these chances cannot be achieved by the one-step solution. This time, one solution respond to all the needs, and we need distributed service that will use in different processes, in deployments, but all of them need a common language, and additionally, you need to ensure that the solution to that is the data space. The main characteristics of data space is interoperability. We need interoperability, the trust, and the data space. There are some organizations working in data space. The names are the International Data Space Association, Gaia-X, Firewall, and the Big Data Value Association. All of them have organized the Data Space Business Alliance, and there is also organization supported by the Commission, this Data Space Support. IDS has published its organization working on standardization and facilitating the data sharing, and have published the reference architecture that you can see there, several components, and the main component is the IDS connector, responsible of the data. To ensure interoperability, they have published the data space protocol to allow the sharing of the data, the transfer of the data in an interoperable level. There is other important project, the Digital project, that was Horizon also, that defined a framework for construction, and they have two main core guidelines that are two pillars: interoperability and control over the use of the data. These are all the aspects that they have in account to achieve these guidelines. I'm going to go deeper there. And in taking account data spaces and the Digiplates framework, we have defined the architecture, that the main component and the orchestration engine versus the business process, with several tools to manage users, the space, the vocabulary, the catalog of services, and there are other optional services that set in the different processes. And it's very important the data sharing with different services, and for that we have defined the data space architecture. Data space architecture based on IDS reference architecture for data sharing, and Gaia X for governance. Explain all the components, but if you want, I can explain it. The solution is that several companies expose their data and using other companies provided, other component processing tools and services developed by other partners in the project, share the data using the Express protocol. Well, the Tekniker data space connector is a component that uses the standard protocol defined by the DSER, as just published, certifying the data, the connect. The process of the data sharing is simple. The data owner publishes the data sets using a catalog based on the CAT to define the ontology, to define catalogs, and the user, the consumer, search for data. He analyzes the catalog, he selects the data he wants, and he starts the contract negotiation protocol. The contract negotiation has different stages, and when the contract is agreed, the transfer process protocol starts. In this case, we have also stage, and finally the transfer protocol starts, and the data that coming from different sources in the corner is transfer the data from the provider to the consumer, but using the IDC connector and maintain the data sovereignty and the control of the use of the data. There is other important component, in this case the vocabulary provider, that is the component that adapts this data space connector and this architecture to the construction sector. In this case, the vocabulary hub is an intermediary that exposes an ontology, a data model that allows the data consumer and provider to understand what is the data, what is the semantic of the data. And also this component in the transfer of the data allows the validation of the data, because you have to ensure that data you are consuming is the data that you want. For do that, we use vocabulary provider that now is Azcona Graph database, ontology manager, and we define some cycle patterns to validate the data. At the end, the result is that the data, when you are transferring the data, finish. The cycle patterns are used to validate that the data is according to the defined in the data model. And this is all for me, because I am a bit fast. But I hope that finish on time.
Yes, thank you.
Do you have any other question?
Is there any question to this regard? No? I would have a question. So if I understand well the presentation, it's Tekniker who is working on this intermediary, the broker who is providing the semantic, let's say, translation, right? So this is the expertise you have. Have you been to the sector, actually, to the supposed stakeholders, and what do they say about this idea of data spaces and sharing? Because of course it's very early on in some sectors. This idea is still not accepted, let's say. So this is why I'm asking.
Yes, yes. I understand that level that is a government. Well, standards, but there are a lot of movement in the area, and currently in construction we are noticing architecture national level also have created digital commit to promote this. It's a common. It's difficult, but because it's very big, the methodology a lot, and an agreement in this.
If there is no other question, I will ask the final one. How is, first, what is understood under data sovereignty, and how is it ensured in your connector?
Yes, it's a difficult to achieve. The idea is that the data space connector has a sandbox where data is stored in order to not to ensure the control of data cannot go out of the sandbox, and it to develop some mechanisms to interact with data.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to the speakers. Thank you for the audience in the room. And we'll soon have, in a couple of minutes only, next session in the same room with a different moderator. Thank you.